Do you know what separates a failed business exit from a highly profitable one? Do you want to maximize the value of your business? The Business Exit Stories podcast is the solution. Through a collection of stories told by the business intermediaries who facilitate those transactions, you'll receive the key takeaways from successful and, yes, some not so successful business exits. Now is the time to begin to position your business for an exit by implementing key strategies designed to maximize your enterprise value and help you achieve an exceptionally profitable exit.
Today we have with us Gerald, an M&A advisor in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, sharing some of the truly unique stories with us that he has had in the last several years. On the podcast, we have discussed some of the concepts we'll chat about today, but in our past episodes, they have never been like the extremes that we're going to be talking about today. You really need to listen to these to see what can happen. For example, in the first story that Gerald shares is about a highly profitable business services company that has 5 highly qualified partners in the business handling all of the key functions of the company. These partners are committed to the business. They work 70 to 80 hours a week on the business and have done for years. One partner is the CEO, another the CFO, yet another the COO. The sales and marketing were handled by a partner, as was the IT department. Yet, even though this company was highly profitable, it turned out to be unsaleable. Why, you ask? Listen in and learn why. Next, we have a $35 million tortilla company with millions in profits that couldn't be sold. Yet, another example of critical strategic errors and mistakes that the entrepreneur made that made it literally impossible for this business to be sold. Every entrepreneur needs to learn from transactional stories like this so that you don't make the same mistakes these entrepreneurs did. You need to pay particularly close attention to several of these stories in this episode. Then we have a transaction where the wrong attorney nearly crashed the deal, and only when the attorney was fired did the deal close. To wrap things up, Gerald shares how not having the right advisor on your team that can position the company to properly generate 10 offers. And when you have competition like this, the deal heats up, causing the offering price to escalate and the terms of the deal to get better for the seller. You'll learn when you have multiple offers, your position in negotiating is enhanced as the profit and deal terms can get better and better, and what you need to do to create this type of situation. This is Marvin L. Storm with the Business Exit Stories podcast. Today we're here with Gerald Kong. Gerald, would you take a few minutes and talk a little bit about your company, where you're located, and maybe just a brief mention on your background? And then we're going to dive right in and talk a little bit about some of the transactions you've been involved in over your career, which I guess spans several decades. And I'm sure that the stories you're going to share today will have a lot of relevance for those that are listening in as they think about positioning their companies for an eventual successful and profitable exit. So, Gerald, talk a little bit about who you are and where you're located. Well, let's talk about another transaction that, was maybe from a fairly good-sized company that maybe had a similar issue that just couldn't get sold.
Right. Well, one of the other things that we measure for before we get on the dance floor, so to speak, with a client is client concentration. Think about this for a second. If any company has more than, say, 15, even 20% of their revenues going to one client, and that company loses that one client, they're dead. They can't make margin.
In theory, all the profitability could go right out the door with just that one client.
Sure. You'll never make margin. You'll never, you have a hard time making payroll. You'll be robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your balance sheet will get disrupted. You could just think of all of it's like a domino effect. You lose that one client. So we came across this one company one time And they were a tortilla company here locally in Texas, and they were really
like Mexican tortillas, right?
That's right. They made flour tortillas is what they did, and they were about a $35 million company, and
well, that's a lot of tortillas.
That's a lot of tortillas, and who knew there was that kind of money in tortillas, right? But
well, somebody's got to eat them.
Well, they're getting sold, so we went out to meet with them, and we told them before we agree to engagement, we're going to sit down and do a little feasibility analysis. And so we got all their information, got all their data. And then one of the things we noticed almost immediately after we received all of their financial statements and things, wow, these margins are extremely low.
So what were they actually pulling to the bottom line? I mean, $35 million is a pretty good sized company.
They were just under 2 million in EBITDA, which is extremely low. And we wanted to understand that. So once we collect
that's
all
down
data,
like 3-4%, 5%, that range. I mean, the low single digit, net on that, right? That's not a lot.
Risky. It's pretty risky because if you have a hiccup somewhere along the way, it'll eat right into that margin. So we wanted to understand, and we interviewed them, and we kind of got to the bottom line. And the bottom line was, well, we're working with a national chain, and that national chain is about 97% of our revenue. And that national chain.
Let's rewind that last statement. What did you say? 97% of their $35 million with one customer?
With one customer. And they're a national brand.
Now, I have never heard of concentration at that level. 60, 70% maybe, but 97%.
Well, this particular brand actually has a habit of doing this to smaller. When I say smaller, I mean, they're not publicly traded companies. So if you have a local presence, you may be doing fairly well, but if you want to get in with these guys, you have to eat your margin. They'll get you the volume, but you have to eat margin.
I am still glassy-eyed over the fact that 97%, I got out my calculator here, that's $34 million out of the $35 million going to one customer.
Well, they allowed them to sell tortillas to restaurants, but not to other purveyors like them, not to other national.
So they had $1 million scattered over a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen other people, but 97%. Right. Holy moly!
Well, they had it written in their contract, and so the contract stated that if they contracted with another purveyor, it was grounds for terminating their agreement.
Such as another grocery chain, like. Can I ask who the company that had the hands around their neck was?
Probably shouldn't say, because then
Okay, well, a national retailer that's known for squeezing margins out of their vendors, so I can guess probably who we're talking about, but we won't mention it here. But but that 97%, $34 million out of 35, and they had it written in their contract if they sold to Trader Joe's or Safeway or here in the West Coast or another grocery chain, they were done.
They were done.
Contract
canceled. We didn't even know that was a stipulation until we started digging in a little bit. And we said, listen, we have some sales and marketing consultants who could help you dilute that concentration. We can help you create more distribution channels and all that through some of our contacts. And that's when they stopped us and they said, no, you can't, because we're not allowed to. And that's when we realized, well, what are you talking about? They said, well, this purveyor, we have a
normally, yeah. I mean, what you're saying there, Gerald, is, you're an advisor, you're trying to help folks to position their company at some point in time, that they can have a successful exit. So what you recommended is spot on, that let's expand your customer base, let's expand your distribution channels. And they say, time out, time out. We can't do that because we're contractually obligated that, we can't do anything else but sell to you.
Well, and, it really, our heart went out to these guys because there really wasn't anything left that we could do for them at this level. I mean, unless we weren't attorneys.
If someone were to come in and attempt to buy that company, there's not let's say, I don't know of a bank or a lender on the planet that would finance that loan.
I don't know of a buyer that would buy it.
You don't have the financing, you don't have the buyer, you don't have anything you can sell.
Right. So.
Wow. That's an extreme case of draconian customer concentration. Customer concentration is one of those things that comes up quite frequently in our discussions here on the podcast, but nothing, Gerald. This is a all-time record of customer concentration. I mean, there really wasn't a business. They were just a appendage on the hand of this big retailer.
Well,
they weren't independent.
The advisor that went out with me on this one, we were just flabbergasted that they had that much concentration. We couldn't even get our head around it.
From the surface, $35 million selling tortillas. What a great business.
Yeah.
Until you find out what's under the hood, huh?
I think
so. I guess what we're really talking about here is the big takeaway for those listening is it's not really about the revenue. $35 million is great. It's about the type of revenue that you have. And in this case, it's the wrong type of revenue.
Well, most buyers, when we talk to them, when we start getting into the nitty gritty of analyzing a company with most buyers and investors, one of the things they really delve into is, what is the client concentration like? Where are the clients coming from? And do we have any percentage that's higher than 5 or 7%? We hear that number all the time, 5 or 7%. You have more than 5 or 7% concentrated one client, and if it is, why? So it's a real issue for buyers. They have a real heartburn over heavy concentrations into one particular client.
Yeah, and if you put yourself on the other side of the table, you're buying a company, it's all about risk. One of the big issues of risk is concentration of customers, vendors, management, a key employee that, can't survive without. Those type of issues are huge. And so, in your role as an advisor, and you find someone that has 10, 15, 20%, you work with them over time to get that concentration down so that it doesn't become an issue in due diligence. It's just something that you can be checked off, that no one is more than 5, 7, 8% of revenue concentration. And if you don't have that, then it's an issue. And in this case, didn't have a company to sell, is what you're telling me.
Well, that's true. And I think the overall takeaway from the first two examples, the business services and this tortilla company, is that the time to go to market isn't when you think you're ready. I mean, really, I think most of your listeners should probably consider that if they're contemplating an exit in the next few years, they probably ought to take a year to maybe 3 years to analyze the company and try to decide, what their factors, what the critical factors are, and try to prepare it to go to market.
Right. It's all about planning and preparation and positioning. When it comes down, the more you do of those three things, the better off you're going to be. And someone like you, that's what you do. That's where your core competency and expertise is getting people down that positioning and preparation role. Well, Gerald, you're going to go down in my book as in the Hall of Fame of the most customer concentration ever.
Yeah. Well, I still have
34 out of
hard time
$35 million is one customer. So I very seriously doubt we're going to top that one. You know.
Thanks for listening to the Business Exit Stories podcast. For more information or to reach out to today's guest, visit www.businessexitstories.com for more details. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast from your favorite podcasting platforms. And remember, maximizing business value at the time of exit doesn't happen magically. It takes planning.